Dannika Warburton, and welcome to today's webinar with Leeuwin Metals. Today, Managing Director Chris Piggott is going to walk you through a presentation primarily focused on the Cross Lake Lithium project in Manitoba in Canada. And he will outline the reasons why Leeuwin is such a compelling value proposition in the current market. This will be followed by a Q&A. So at any time, please do feel free to drop us a question into the Q&A feature, which is down the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Chris to share the presentation.
Yeah, I'll just run you guys through the Leeuwin Metals story and give an update on current activities for the company and the plans for 2024. Please read when available. As an investment overview, we feel like the team and management team in countries is really well experienced and positioned to execute the programs on the ground. And it's well supported by an experienced board and management team in Perth, as well as kind of being able to execute those programs in Canada. We've got Glencore as a 10% holder. It's a very important strategic cornerstone to what we're doing at Leeuwin, and they've been very supportive of the work we've been able to execute across our portfolio to date. Leeuwin, we're very much focused on projects in Tier 1 jurisdictions with low sovereign risk, and that's really important when looking for metals and projects that have long mine lives. So in that regard, our key projects are in Manitoba, Canada, so the centre of North America, as well as some other projects we have in Western Australia. Our projects are primarily focused on lithium and nickel. Both of these metals are extremely critical to the energy transition, and hopefully via discovery we can leverage off that and ride that kind of long-term thematic. Our Cross Lake Lithium project is currently our main focus and our flagship project there in Manitoba. What we have there is over 20-metre wide pegmatite zones at plus 1% lithium. We can see these in outcrop, and we've got over 4.7 kilometres of strike of these spodumene-bearing pegmatites already to date, and we're aiming to be drilling out there this year, testing those, building out that resource potential, and as well as targeting the exploration potential at depth and along strike. We also have a really high quality nickel sulfide project in Manitoba as well at the William Lake project. We completed drilling there last year, and we delivered multiple high grade zones of mineralisation up to 5% nickel. So all in all, very critical, very interesting projects with real geological merit, supported by a team that can execute projects and make discoveries and ultimately create shareholder value. This is just a bit of an overview of what we've done since listing. So I think, we're relatively young. We did list about this time last year. And, we're not a lifestyle company. I think that's the takeaway from this slide here. So since listing, in March last year, we've put out to market 20-metre wide zones at plus 1%. We've increased our tenure position out at Cross Lake. We've done our initial field work, we've submitted a drill permit out there at Cross Lake, and we'll be delivering on that and then executing a drill program this year. So all in all, just at Cross Lake alone, we've been very active on the ground and very focused. At our William Lake project, we executed a drill program out there, as well as in WA. We were able to work up our project and build a portfolio of exploration projects in Western Australia. And we're very much focused on value for shareholders via exploration, and I think it goes back to being very much focused on delivering the things we said we're going to do, as well as just executing things on the ground. We've got guys out there already this year out at Cross Lake, working those projects up, and I've been out to site in WA already twice this year on some of our other projects. It was pretty warm, but I think we set the tone for the year by being on the ground already and working towards those programs that we want to deliver for the news flow in 2024. Bit of an overview of our corporate structure. So LM1's our code. Currently, we have about 63.5 million shares on issue. Board, management, Glencore, all heavily aligned, tightly held. The share price has come off a little bit, much in line with market conditions, but we're still well capitalized as far as cash goes. Last quarterly had about 2.7 in the bank, and all in all, it gives us a really low EV of around 3 million Aussie. So I think from that point of view, Leeuwin provides a really great leveraged opportunity to lithium and a discovery that could be made at Cross Lake, and a supportive shareholder base. And I know some people on this call are shareholders today, and you've been very appreciative of the support that shareholders have given us to date. bit on the board and management team. So the chairman is Simon Jackson. He's currently the chair of PDI. He's got a long history in mining and exploration in Australia as well as in Canada. He's lived in Vancouver, so he's got good networks with capital markets in North America, as well as being kind of a accountant by background, so offers good oversight and compliance in that regard. Myself, I'm a geologist. I've been doing it for about 15 years, and I've done a mixture of open pit, underground, project gen, and Leeuwin's the first time to be actually take projects and really leverage off that to create value and make discoveries. Scott Williamson, he's also on the board. He's a NED, currently running Blackstone, and he's a mining engineer. And I think all in all, you can see how this board already has the right skill sets to take a company like Leeuwin along the journey. And there's also Nick Catras there. We started Leeuwin a few years ago together. He's got the CFO accounting background, and he makes sure that we're able to be ASX compliant, audit, legal, all those types of things that you need when running an ASX company, and he's an invaluable part of the team. And in country there, leading that is Daniel Oosterman. He's a geologist with a lot of experience in Manitoba, and he spends a lot of time there, and he's very much hands-on on the ground, boots on ground, leads in that way. And we're just really pleased to be able to put all these people together in Leeuwin, and we can hopefully, find things, develop them, and create value for shareholders with the core team we already have to date. This slide's a bit of an overview of the projects we have in the company. We do go through them in detail further, but as a high level kind of snapshot of what Leeuwin is, we've got our Cross Lake lithium project here in Manitoba. There we've got our outcropping pegmatites, 20+ meter wide zones of lithium bearing pegmatites there. We've got our William Lake nickel project in the Thompson Belt, again in Manitoba. And I think importantly for shareholders and people new to the story is that on this growing thematic of developing of North American supply chains, Manitoba is smack bang in the middle of Canada. There's, North America, America's just to the south there. So you have access to export product all over the world via ports to the north or railway to the south to all of America, and ultimately feed that emerging demand and supply chain there. We also have a pool of projects in Western Australia that are a much earlier stage, but we think that by doing kind of some real cost-effective exploration, we can add a lot of value on our exploration success. Why Manitoba and why Canada? So Manitoba, there's a long history of mining there. There's copper mines, there's a nickel mine, and there's even a lithium cesium mine there. And it's got excellent geology. It shares lots of similar geology with Ontario and Quebec as those greenstone belts come across northern Canada. But you also have the Thompson nickel belt, which is a world-class prolific nickel belt. You have a lot of access to hydropower. So much like Quebec in that regard, there is an enormous amount of hydropower there. The overwhelming majority of Manitoba's power is sourced via hydro, and our projects can tap into that on a success basis. There's power lines, things going like that through our properties. Unlike some other projects in the world, this has a lot of boxes ticked in infrastructure already. And on that, we have access to rail and roads as well. So one of the critical things that we wanted when we were looking for projects in North America and Canada is you want to be able to essentially drive to these projects and have access to development pathways. We're not looking for small things. We're looking for things that will ultimately need to ride on the back of infrastructure, and having access to railway and power is critical. And in that regard, Cross Lake is only 100 k's away from a railway line. And I think when you compare a lot of the other Canadian explorers out there, that puts us a few steps ahead from that point of view. Additionally, we've also noticed that we have a bit of a first mover advantage in Manitoba. We know that the geology is really prospective. We know that the regulatory environment is really good. And we're starting to see a few Aussie companies, ASX companies starting to enter there. We've even seen some bigger companies there, even recently peg some ground near us. So all in all, I think, we feel pretty comfortable that we've been able to secure such a large ground position in Manitoba early before some other people start entering the province. Why Canada as well? I think we're all very familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act and flow-through funding, but I don't think people fully comprehend how valuable they are to companies like us. And as we grow, we have ability to access that funding, as well as kind of having a very supportive government at a federal level. And I think when you look at a lot of these, the geopolitics of these metals, Canada and Australia have really good relationships with the US, and you know, we are, you know, anticipating that they're at the front of the queue as that North American supply chain starts to develop. And this slide just gives a brief overview of the lithium thematic and what's going on in the space. And I know we're all living and breathing it on a day-to-day basis. But my key takeaway from this is that demand is real. You know, you look at car sales, some of these groups are saying there's a 30% growth on car sales year on year on electric vehicles. I mean, that's an enormous growth rate. And also with the parallels that are being drawn with, you know, iron ore in the past, and people starting to maybe call the bottom in the lithium price. When you look back in history, moments like these potentially represent, you know, really good buying opportunities and ability to ride the next kind of wave of, you know, demand. Bit on the Cross Lake project now. This is our flagship project. It's very much focused on lithium exploration out here. We have over 2,000 square kilometres of tenure out here, covering about 70 k's of greenstone belt. You know, I think when you look at a lot of peers in the region globally, it's an extremely large footprint of exploration prospectivity there over prospective greenstone belt. From that point of view, being a first mover has definitely been advantageous to us. Additionally, we're close to hydropower, roads, rail, so setting us up on a success basis that we can tap into those that infrastructure and ultimately provide realistic chances of developing these projects. On the geology, what initially drew us to this area was some historic drilling that took place in the 80s. They were targeting tin tantalum out there, but they never assayed for lithium. We knew that there was wide zones of pegmatites, but there was no lithium assay. So we were able to locate that core. And from there, we've been able to assay about half of those holes. And some of the best results to date, about 25 meters at 1.1 and 15 meters at 1.4. And already that's defined over a 700 meter strike of a pegmatite swarm. But excitingly, and something that offers real upside to Leeuwin shareholders, is the potential for a real regional opportunity here. So there's already 4.7 kilometers of strike end to end. So we know that we've got the historic drilling there. And then 4.7 k's away, there's a rock chip that goes 4% lithia in outcrop. We know there's channel samples there, 7 meters at plus 1%. 6 at 1.175% lithium. And I mean, we were out there, we were standing on these outcropping pegmatite, rich pegmatites, and we were able to sample them. So we've definitely got a feel that this is a very real project. The geology seems to stack up pretty well at such an early stage. And that's all supported by the initial drilling that took place here in the 80s that we're aiming to follow up. And on that drilling that took place, you can kind of see on this image here, the work that we've been able to do is identify this 700 meter strike of pegmatite swarm by about 300 meters across. And from there, we've got our drill permit in. We've got an initial kind of 10,000 meter permit submitted to the government. And from there, we're going to phase that exploration possibly over about a 2,000 meter program. And you can kind of see how the initial drilling will look, targeting this area of mineralisation, following up results like this, but also potentially adding to the real exploration upside, testing this mineralisation at depth and along strike that hasn't been done. A lot of these drill holes are extremely shallow. I mean, you've got drill hits from 6 meters here, 75 meters there at the deepest there. So when you look at that on a vertical basis, they've only really tested the top 50 meters. And as we know, and as we've seen exploration companies go out and drill these things at depth, sometimes they get really good at depth. And kind of we're hopeful that that'll be the same case when we go out there and get the rig spinning. On the regional exploration upside, we know we've got this area of drilling here. That's where that 700 meter strike is already defined. But on this 4.7K trend, we're seeing the same type of pegmatites in outcrop. And these highlight some of the assay results we've been able to kind of generate. We're seeing it, it's visual, large spodumene crystals in outcrop confirmed by high grade assays. We're seeing the right LCT signatures over a large kind of area, and regionally as well. Outside of this, we know we've got 70 k's of greenstone belt. So it gives kind of Leeuwin shareholders that real wild card regional exploration upside as well, outside of this 5K trend already. So when we look forward to 2024 out at Cross Lake, We've put in our 10,000 meter drill permit, and we'll be phasing that and initially doing our first 2,000 meters this year. And then based on that, gives us the ability to scale that project up and that drill program up on a success basis. We're also looking at doing some regional fieldwork, not only testing that key 4.7K trend, but we also know we've got this 70K of greenstone belt that's completely underexplored for lithium. And the team's working on strategies and programs to how deliver value in that, and come the summer months we'll be out there doing that work. So all in all, at the current valuation of Leeuwin, we're extremely leveraged to any exploration success out there. On William Lake, this is our nickel project. This is a high quality nickel sulfide project in a tier 1 location, close to infrastructure, hydropower, all those types of things that government are talking about in the world is talking about. And in the right time, this project is going to be very significant, I think, for us. The current nickel market is very soft, and that'll take time to work through. But I don't think, when you look at projects like this, you want a quality project that you can hold onto and have a leveraged option to a rising nickel price. And on that, we've got over 500 square kilometers of the Thompson Belt geology here. We've delivered some really high grade drill results to date. The results we were able to produce last year, in addition to the historic results of 21 meters at 1%, including 1.35 at 5% nickel. I mean, that is seriously good grade as far as nickel sulfides go. And we also drilled another 6.5 meters at 2.5%, 2 Ks away. And so we know that we've got a handful of these target areas at W21, W56 and W22. This project isn't kind of a one-trick pony. The high-grade results we were able to generate were from W56, but we know that there's untested areas that have plus 1% nickel and PGEs present plus 1 gram per tonne there, that are going to be, over time, we will ultimately work these projects up and develop them. But yeah, this is a high-quality nickel sulfide project in a tier 1 location. On our additional projects in Western Australia, we've been actually building a bit of a portfolio of early stage grassroots exploration out here. We've got over 800 square kilometres of tenure. We've got our kind of package in the Gascoyne region, which I visited last week. We've got over 350 kilometres out there. We've seen kind of large scale rare earth anomalism. We've got some elevated lithium grades there, 500 ppm lithium in a pegmatite. So we know that it's prospective for rare earths and lithium, and we're just continuing to work those projects up. We've also got some ground in the Pilbara at Marble Bar, which is pretty interesting, not far from Global Lithium and next to the ground that Kalamazoo ventured into, I think, Leeuwin Metals with the SQM joint venture up there. So all in all, I mean, Western Australia is a prolific mineral province, and with this stuff in WA, it's relatively easy to access. It's relatively straightforward to go out there and do the work, and relatively cost effective. And when you do make a discovery, the market rewards you. And so we're just working these projects up while we focus on our Canadian projects, and specifically Cross Lake. But this really offers a bit of a lotto ticket for shareholders as far as what we can deliver in WA. So when we look to the work programs this year, it's going to very much focus on that early stage work, increasing the value, building up the portfolio and the value of those projects via geochemistry, remote sensing, mapping, rock chipping, things like that. So why Leeuwin Metals? As a bit of an investment summary and highlight, we've got a good team in country and a really solid board. We've got Glencore there as a 10% holder. We're very much focused on tier 1 jurisdictions. People, it's a bit of a dry subject, but when you look at what's happening around the world, being in a tier 1 jurisdiction doesn't really matter until it really does matter. And I think we've seen that in Panama, Chile, various places in Africa. If you're going to find something of significant value, you want to know that it's yours for the whole journey, and you can make long-term decisions on that. We're applying modern exploration tools to these projects. We're young, we're motivated, and we want to use the best tools available out there to make discoveries. And our projects are high quality. And I think, Cross Lake alone is an exceptional project already. It's got a, 4.7K strike already, with historic drilling confirming 20-meter wide zones of pegmatites to date. So that's, puts us in a really good position coming into 2024, providing a catalyst on the back of that drilling. And just to kind of summarize as well, our projects are very much focused on metals for the future, and that taps into doing the right thing, being conscious of our ESG obligations, and making sure that we're acting as a good corporate citizen and engaging and starting that process early. So that's Leeuwin Metals.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Very informative. We'll stop sharing the screen now and jump straight into the investor questions that have come through. So he says, Chris, exploring across two core areas, i.e. Cross Lake and William Lake, it burns cash. You've got 2.7 million in the bank as at 31st of December. Would it be better to focus only on Cross Lake and perhaps hold off on other exploration for the time being?
Yeah, that's the plan at the moment is to more focus on the Cross Lake project. I think in that regard, Cross Lake, it's shallow, it's outcropping, and it's lithium. And, because we've been able to work in Manitoba already, we've got a really good established network. We know how to get things done in Manitoba. We know the right people to speak to and how to operate there. I mean, in that regard, there is synergies working two projects in the same province. It's not like we're working all over the world. Our projects are very much West Australia and Manitoba focused. And from there's lots of operational synergies. We staying in the same accommodation. We've got the same core yard for both projects and the same people that we utilise for both of those projects. So on that note, there is definitely kind of cost savings by focusing on Manitoba.
Okay. And with regard to the Cross Lake exploration strategy, what is your ultimate goal for this upcoming field season?
Yeah, so immediately kind of the obvious outcomes we want to see achieve is drill bit success. So, if we can replicate and better those results that have already been done, that'd be kind of a major, positive. And also hopefully expand that footprint of mineralisation at depth and along strike. And then also regionally build up that exploration upside, that kind of blue sky, as far as building out that 4.7 trend further, doing more detailed work out there in the summer, and then adding that potential real sizzle, testing that kind of 70 k's of strike of greenstone belt that's never really been looked at for lithium. And if we can do those things and execute on that, we've potentially got a new, lithium province in Canada, and that really gives us, being a first mover advantage, we're able to consolidate that whole greenstone belt relatively cost effectively and fast. And that puts Leeuwin as kind of, hopefully as a standout lithium explorer on the ASX.
Yeah, and with regard to, so you've got over 70 kilometres of strike. How do you prioritise the regional exploration over such a large area?
Yeah, so part of that process is doing your targeting, which we've started, and then utilising tools like LiDAR, some remote sensing tools, and potentially geophysics, and then going out there and walking the ground and putting people out in the field and taking samples, and then doing mapping and doing that work on the ground, and then ultimately making the decision based on what we're seeing.
Okay. We had a question from John come through on Manitoba with regard to the infrastructure there, if you could go into some detail. But I read that Glencore recently staked some ground in Manitoba. Is that true? Why do you think the big miners are attracted to Manitoba?
Yeah, so there was actually Fortescue, I think. So that was kind of an interesting one. I think people are recognizing that geopolitics and those risks that are associated with not being in tier one jurisdictions can be, pretty serious if things change fast. And we've seen that, Panama, South America. And I think big companies like that want to have certainty on their projects and have access to that IRA compliance. And having the rule of law is really important. And knowing how to work, and if you make a discovery of something of value, that you can take long-term views and make investments over, pretty serious quantums, and have certainty on your security of tenure over there. And I think, coupled with the fact that Manitoba shares lots of similar geology with Ontario and Quebec, except maybe there was just this arbitrary boundary there that was the province. But people have started to recognise that the geology goes across the border, and the prospectivity of the rocks do not change based on boundaries we put in there. And I think the bigger companies are seeing that, and we've been very fortunate that we've been able to develop a good relationship with people in the area, whether that's kind of community groups, First Nations, government, and service providers. And we've been able to work in Manitoba and do quite a lot of exploration. And I think that's a real kind of positive on the province. The province has become, since we've been there, we've probably been there for about 3 years now. They've definitely shown a keen interest in what we're doing, and they've definitely been a province that's been improving its relationship and policies towards exploration. And in that regard, there's things that they can help with co-funding of exploration, much like the EIS co-funding happens in Western Australia. Initiatives like that from a government level are very positive for companies at our end of the spectrum. But you also have federally, funding for infrastructure and things like that are, tens of millions, billions of dollars worth of funding that's coming through from a federal level as well. So we're seeing kind of not only lip service paid by governments, but you're seeing real kind of dollars committed by governments, both at a provincial and a federal level, across that whole exploration to mining life cycle. So all in all, Canada's doing a lot of good things in that regard, and hopefully on discoveries, Canada's in the prime spot to supply those metals to North America and America as those battery factories get built.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the presentation you've already got the existing infrastructure, the rail, 100 kilometres away, the hydro, electric plant, that sort of thing, the established workforce. So
yeah, very much so. The history of mining there's a long history. We're about a couple of hours drive south of the mining town of Thompson. They've been mining since the 60s. We have phone reception on all of our projects out there. You can see hydro power lines. So in that regard, it's really good.
Better than the out the bush in WA or something.
In some places. I mean, yeah, you look at that and you look at the potential price of what diesel costs per kilowatt hour. Hydro power in Manitoba and Quebec's typically in the range of kind of 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So significant cost saving if these mines get built and tap into that.
Okay. I think I must have Glencore on the mind before because so you mentioned Glencore holds just under 10% in Leeuwin, and they provide technical input. And in the quarterly, you said there was a recent technical committee. What sort of input? Can you maybe expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so obviously everyone's familiar with Glencore. They're, a large multinational kind of multi-commodity company with a lot of experience in Canada across every commodity pretty much. And we have access to some of those people, right, through the formation of our technical committee. And they offer really good sound advice, more directly related to William Lake. And they can give us really good advice as far as what they're thinking, where they see the market and any kind of opportunities and technologies that we can apply to our project. But more broadly, they've got a really good technical centre in Sudbury, and they offer potential to kind of help with all those technical types of things, whether it's geology, mining, metallurgy. And I think for a company like us, being able to access, world-class experts, leaders in their kind of fields, gives us a bit of a leg up in that regard because we are a small team. But being able to tap into that kind of knowledge base is definitely very helpful and advantageous to us at Leeuwin.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the exploration strategy, you did mention briefly, the commodity price for nickel in particular. How much does the commodity price and market sentiment play into your exploration strategy, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be conscious of it, right? Like no one's immune to the cycle. But at the end of the day, mining and exploration is a cyclical business. And, my kind of take from the current price action in lithium is, ultimately this kills projects potentially, but that then feeds the unfulfilled demand. And we are seeing growing demand, right? Like you've seen it, 30% growth in car sales. You're seeing, things like Pilbara Minerals are putting out increasing offtake agreements with their battery suppliers and chemical makers. So all in all, I think these price environments set up the future kind of increased demand and a better pricing environment for lithium in the future. And I think while it is short-term pain, I think longer term, it's healthy for these cycles to occur in the commodity cycle. And ultimately, if your project is a high enough quality, and we're hopeful that Cross Lake will be, projects like this kind of survive and ultimately thrive throughout those cycles. But the other thing with Leeuwin as well, we're highly leveraged to success on the exploration front as well. So hopefully we can tap into that rising price environment while delivering positive exploration results to market.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess on that a little bit further on the market, what's your enterprise value and how do you compare to your peers? Maybe.
Yeah, so our EV is about 3 million Aussie. so pretty modest. It gives an opportunity for people entering at these prices, real leveraged upside to any success. And I think when you look at peers based on kind of what our drill results to date look like from the historic work, you can look in Western Australia and you can kind of see things like Global Lithium there. I think our drill hits are on par, similar to those types of things out at Mana. But then in Canada, you've got things like Global GT1, and even in Brazil, Latin Resources, they're delivering kind of 20, 30 meter wide zones at plus 1%. Not too dissimilar to what we see at Cross Lake. And I think more broadly, when you go a bit further down on maybe the earlier stage exploration front, you've got groups in Canada, you've got Lithium Ionic in Brazil, but you've also got groups like Critical Resources, Cygnus, Loyal Lithium, all up in Quebec area and Ontario. Their results are kind of on par or in the same range as what we've produced to date at Cross Lake, and they're trading at multiples of what we are. Obviously everyone's kind of taken a little bit of a haircut recently, but I think, for where we are, we've got an EV that values our projects essentially at rock chips. And when you look at what we've actually got, we've got channel samples, rock chips, and real drill hits with pegmatites that have spodumene in over plus 20 meters. So I think, maybe we kind of been out in Manitoba. It's a bit of a different jurisdiction and investors aren't familiar with it. But I think it has many similar positives to Quebec that people draw, hydropower, infrastructure supported government, things like that. So I think all in all, people should really have a good look at Leeuwin Metals and Cross Lake and compare it to some of the peers out there, and see where we stack up.
Okay. I've got 3 more questions for you. The first one's from one of your shareholders, Michelle, who wanted to know if you were in the future considering merging with other companies to become bigger.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I think there's probably not like something we're thinking about too much. I think we're very much focused on delivering value via exploration, growing organically and making discoveries. And I think from there, that's kind of the real value driver for us. I mean, you never know what happens in the future, but we're very kind of comfortable with our current plan to grow the portfolio and ultimately grow the company by discovery in the lithium space. So looking for, mergers or whatever is probably not something that's a priority for us at this point.
Yeah. And okay, so to succinctly summarize the upcoming catalysts for shareholders and potential investors considering investing in Leeuwin, what are the milestones that they should be looking out for over the next sort of 6 months?
Yeah, I think when investors look at Leeuwin, they should think of, we've got a, very low EV of about 3 million. We've got a really motivated team that's there for equity shareholder returns, with some good partners in Glencore there supporting the work that we're doing. But ultimately, in the near term, we have a major catalyst as far as exploration goes, and that's that drilling program at Cross Lake. And I think, based on the fact that it's, probably potentially the bottom of the lithium market now, as well as an EV of about 3 million, we've got 2.7 last quarterly. That gives us plenty of runway to start these programs and ultimately, have lots of leveraged upside to exploration success at Cross Lake when we get drilling out there.
Any final parting words that you wanted to leave investors on the call and those that might watch the replay with?
Yeah, I think investors, I'd invite them to get in touch and review what we've been putting out to market. We're very much focused on being a lean company with low corporate overheads and focused on putting our money in the ground. And, with the drill program coming up this year at Cross Lake, it does really give investors upside from a really low base of a 3 million EV to ride some exploration success once we get drilling, and hopefully we can kind of put some really positive results to market over the coming months.
Yeah, great. Everyone's going to be very excited for the results to come when they start flowing through. When is it that you think you're going to be kicking off and the results coming in?
Yeah, so we're still working through the permitting process, but we're anticipating that we'll be out there in the next few months.
Okay.
So kind of probably Q2. That's the current end of Q1, beginning of Q2's current kind of planning and thoughts at the moment. And we've lined up some drill contractors, and we're just reviewing those and going through that nuts and bolts process of seeing who can go out there and drill the meters at a cost-effective rate for us. So we're very focused on advancing that, and very excited to be hitting the ground with the drill rig, as well as looking at doing our regional exploration come the summer months, once the snow melts, probably sometime in the middle of the year as well. So, you know, potential news flow, not only just from the drill rig, but also that regional exploration upside as well, come the summer months, as well as kind of the project and earlier stage exploration work we're doing in Western Australia all year round.
Okay. Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for your time, Chris, and thank you to everybody who joined today's call. We will be providing a replay, which we'll email to you, and it will also be on the website in coming days. So if there's any questions that accrue from that, please feel free to reach out to Chris or myself. The email address for Chris is on the bottom of the ASX announcements. And yeah, thank you, Chris. We look forward to your discovery success this year in 2024.
Thank you.